Hey there, part two of our Barna Research report here on the 5-minute video. I'm Keith. I'm continuing to look this over here, and it is kind of interesting. So it seems, if I'm reading this correctly, it seems that of the 73% who identify as Christian, 48% are what they would call post-Christian or non-practicing Christians. And 31%, a smaller number, are what we call practicing Christians. So in other words, out of that 73%, which is a large majority of people in America who identify as Christian, only 31% of those, less than half of them, are practicing Christians. And again, the way Barna measures practicing Christian is someone who attends church regularly, prays to God, reads the Bible, etc. And 41% of them, the majority of them, who say, I'm a Christian, but they don't attend church. And it's fascinating to me because they didn't ask about house church here. They're not including house churches in the mix. And I'm curious if that 41% number is, how many of that 41% would be organic church members who don't attend a weekly service in a building. Fascinating. The other thing that was interesting was the size of the churches that Christians in America are a part of. So again, I'm going to read here from the report. It says, as far as Barna is concerned, regular church attendance is central to understanding faith practice among American adults. I would disagree, but this is the criteria they're using. Now, keeping that in mind, what they found was that nearly half of those who are practicing Christians, 46% of them, attend a church of 100 or less members. 46%. Well, that could also qualify as an organic church, or at least a small church. So in other words, the majority of churches that are out there are small churches, 100 people or less. More than 1/3, 37%, attend a mid-sized church of 100 or more, but not larger than 500. 1 in 11, that's 9%, attend a church in the 500 to 1,000 range, and only 8% attend a church of 1,000 or more attendees. So it's a very, very small number of people going to mega churches. The vast majority of them going to churches of 100 people or less, nearly half. I find that interesting. So it seems that the church in America is moving towards meeting in smaller groups, smaller numbers, perhaps even meeting in homes, again, because they didn't measure that or ask that. But that was interesting to me. Also here, I want to go back to what I talked about in the previous video about how they measured the expression of the faith of Americans. And they measured it as attending a church service, volunteering at a church, attending Sunday school, or attending a small group. And that concerns me, that the only way they can think of to measure your faith is how often you go to a meeting. And so I just was writing down my own thoughts here of like, if I was going to do a survey, how would I measure whether or not somebody was really a Christian? In other words, how would I like to know how much they were living out their faith and how much their faith really meant to their actual life? I would ask them things like this. I would love to know how many of them served others. You do something nice for a neighbor or a friend. You're actively positioning yourself as a servant. I would like to know how many of them are actually giving directly to someone in need. You know, the guy on the sidewalk or someone you meet at the grocery store. I mean, there's a whole section here about giving as far as tithing and giving to churches as organizations, and that's the vast majority where the money is being given. But what about just natural, honest compassion that results in sharing some of your money with someone who is obviously in need? I think that would be a good way to measure someone's faith. How often do you talk about Jesus? How much do you share your faith with other people? That would be a good question to ask. And also, how much are you regularly wanting and seeking to put the words of Jesus into practice in your actual life? In other words, are you forgiving people because Jesus said to forgive people? Are you blessing those who curse you? Are you praying for those who hate you? Are you showing mercy to those who you don't typically think deserve mercy? Because again, Jesus commanded these things. Are you seeking to be more loving in your life and in your relationships with people around you and even with strangers? Are you wanting to be more loving because Jesus said, I give you this command to love one another as I have loved you? And how often are you seriously thinking about abiding in Christ, and what does it mean to abide in Christ? It would be wonderful if we could have asked people those questions. I suspect those numbers might drop. But that's just the pessimist in me. And anyway, this is turning into a 6-minute video, and I apologize. But we will continue it again going forward. Thanks for listening. God bless.